to let you know that we will get started when we have a quorum. And so far, it looks like it's just me. Until then, be patient and listen to the music, if there's music. So before we begin, I want to remind this committee and members of the public to follow our code of conduct at meetings. This includes commenting on the specific agenda item only and addressing the full body. Public speakers will not engage in conversation with the chair, council members, board members, commissioners, or staff. All members of the committee, staff, and public are expected to refrain from abusive language. Failure to comply with the code of conduct, which will disturb, disrupt, or impede the orderly conduct of this meeting, will result in removal from the meeting. This meeting of the Community and Economic Development Committee will now come to order. Can the clerk please call the roll?
Carrasco. Perales.
Here.
Mahan.
Here.
Esparza. Foley.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great, thank you. We don't have anything on the work plan to review, and we don't have anything in the consent calendar, so I'm just going to move into the reports. The first report is the city report, citywide planning activities. It's a verbal status report. We hear this report quarterly, and I understand that Michael Brio and Martina Davis will be giving this presentation.
That is correct. Thank you, Council Member Foley. Martina's going to go ahead and share her screen. Okay. Next slide. Okay, so yeah, so this is a verbal report, just kind of let you know what the citywide planning team has been doing and what we are planning to do in the near future. So we're going to start with urban villages. As you know, the council has approved 14 urban village plans to date. The next urban village plan that's coming to council for its consideration is the North First Street Urban Village, which is coming to council on March 15th, a couple of weeks from now. So that will be the next one on deck, so we can bump that number from 14 to 15. We have two urban village plans that we received grant funding some time ago that have yet to start. One is the Southwest Expressway Ray Street Urban Village, and the other is the Alum Rock East Urban Village. Just mind you, there are 3 urban villages at Alum Rock, so it gets confusing sometimes, but this is the last one that still needs to be done. Excuse me, there's 2 urban villages in Alum Rock. This is the last one that needs to be done. And the Southwest is anticipated to be initiated in the fall of this year with planned completion in the spring of 2024. Alum Rock East is planned to begin the public process about this time next year, with planned completion in the fall of 2024. I will admit we've had very much challenges getting these off the ground, particularly with the process to bring consultants on board, which has been very lengthy process just in terms of getting RFPs out there due to staffing constraints that we're having administratively, but also because consultants are not responding to RFPs. They're very busy. And so we're actually rethinking the process in terms of not using consultants anymore, at least not for these two plans going forward, and doing it in-house. Not entirely, but mostly entirely. So we do not need to rely on the RFP process and getting consultants to respond. Next slide. Okay, and so the two other, technically these are urban villages, but they fall under the stationary planning team. We have, if you may recall, as part of the 4-year review of the general plan update process, a new urban village called the Capital Caltrain Station area was approved by council. It's in Council District 7. It's on Monterey Highway, adjacent to the Capital Caltrain train station. So that process, we have funding to do that process through a LEAP, I think it's LEAP or REAP grant. I think it's LEAP grant. And we have a procurement process underway for consultants there. We are not really using consultants a whole lot in this village. To be frank, we're going to do primarily in-house. We plan on starting the public process. That the date we're looking at this point is kicking it off in May. And this will be a relatively fast process. It's a very small urban village or station area village. We plan that the process would be done in 14 months. So we have summer of 2023 approximately. The other stationary planning process that's occurring is the Five Wounds update. And then keep in mind that the Five Wounds is a term used collectively for 4 urban villages, which include Five Wounds, 24th and William Street, Little Portugal, and Roosevelt Park. So based on the work that was done, which we were part of with VTA, was the playbook for the Five Wounds 28th Street BART station. And as a result of that process, it made a number of recommendations about how to increase opportunities for development in specifically the Five Wounds urban villages, as well as some of the surrounding urban villages, the other 3 as well. So as a result of that, VTA and planning, the City of San Jose Planning Department, are in the process of initiating a update to that Five Wounds plan. There's a procurement process underway that's being led by, it's joint actually, San Jose VTA. They're hiring a body of consultants to do work related to access and mobility, parking, as well as doing an analysis and coming up with strategies related to displacement of people from their homes and how to mitigate that, as well as displacement of small businesses, because there's a lot of small independent businesses in this area, in both industrial and kind of retail and services as well, that could be displaced if market forces are just left to run their course. And so that's a big part of that process. Then we have funding through a REAP and LEAP grant to update the land use plan, look at if there's any tweaks needed related to urban design specific for this village. And then on top of that, VTA is doing a whole planning process, design for development process for the actual station site itself. So all 3 of those processes are being done concurrently and in coordination. We also plan to kick that process off in May of 2022, anticipate completing the update of the Five Wounds, collectively the 4 Five Wounds plans, in the summer of 2023. Next slide. So the other major body of work that we're undertaking, which was given to us by direction by the City Council, and of course, was also, we were directed to do it per state law, SB 1333, is to align the city's zoning with the general plan. And just to note, there's been many phases of this. There's been roughly what we call phase 1, which is broken into phase 1A and 1B, and then phase 2. The first phase of work is done, and that was really looking at the existing zoning code, particularly as it relates to uses and what was allowed where, and making modifications to align with our general plan. Secondarily, we also needed to create zoning districts for urban village and mixed use and high density type zoning districts or general plan designations. I'm sorry, that conform to those general plan designations, because we didn't have currently, or at the time, we didn't have zoning districts that actually conform and implement the general plan. That work was done. It was approved by council in May of last year. So we're on to phase two, and phase two is really just about rezoning roughly 12, 15 or so thousand properties in the city that have a zoning district that does not align with the actual general plan designation for that given property. And that's in progress. I just want to note that as part of this process, the city got former Senator Jim Bell to sponsor a bill, which is largely written by Martina Davis, who's coming up next, called SB 940, that allows us flexibility in doing down zonings where we can bank up zoning capacity, and we can then use that banked up zone capacity to conduct down zonings later on for the purposes of aligning our zoning with our general plan. So that work is ongoing. As you see, we have a number of hearing council dates that are planned in April, 2 in April and 1 in May, to rezone about, looks like about 800 properties, almost 900 properties in the city. And we'll be continuing to do this work through the rest of the year. We are anticipating that we will complete all the needed down zonings in the city by January 31st of next year. That's the date by which we need to complete that work if we want to take advantage of that state law SB 940 that gives us flexibility for down zonings with up zonings. We also anticipate by January 31st of next year that we will be able to rezone, or will have completed rezonings for most of the growth areas in the general plan. Next slide. And with this, I'm going to turn it over to Martina Davis.
All right, hello everybody, Martina Davis. I'm the acting division manager in our citywide planning group. I'm very happy to be here. So a real quick touch on our ordinance and policy work we have going. So Sb9, starting with that one, as you probably recall, we brought an urgency ordinance to council in December that was adopted. So we do have some standards on the books now for that bill that we're using. These are just our baseline standards. It's something that we, to use because the bill is in fact effective. We've also worked to update our application forms and place materials on our website. We have a couple checklists, one for subdivision, one for building additional units, modeled after our ADU checklist. So they should be helpful to customers trying to figure out, does my property qualify? What can I do under this bill? Those are on our website. And our next phase of work on this is to work on a set of comprehensive standards for Sb9 in our city, which would be developed with a significant amount of community outreach. We also, as directed by council, would explore expanding it to the R2 zones, as well as coming up with a unique set of criteria that would allow historic properties to be able to add density while still being sensitive to the historic nature. We are working on staffing and work plan for that. We expect that work to begin in earnest, probably in late spring or summer of this year. We did get initial approval from the state to use some of that either LEAP or REAP grant money that we were planning to allocate to opportunity housing to this work, so that we can maybe get some outside consultant resources as needed using that grant funding. We do expect that once we start work to probably take about a year to complete. The next one I'll talk about is what we're calling YIGBY, Yes in God's Backyard is what that stands for. That's a policy work to update our PQP, public quasi-public zoning and general plan designations to allow places of assembly to build 100% affordable housing as an incidental use on their property. We do think that the bulk of the people who would be using this bill would be religious assembly, as a lot of them tend to have extra land and are looking to do their part in helping solve the housing crisis. So we kicked off outreach to that work this for that work this past summer, we held a general community meeting to just kind of introduce people to what we're thinking, get some initial feedback. And then we also had a focus group with affordable developers and then one with assembly users. So we're taking that feedback into account when we're kind of continuing the work on this. Where we're at now and what's really going to be driving the timeline is the CEQA work for this policy update. Because we are looking at allowing more housing in places that housing wasn't already anticipated. We do have to do a decent amount of analysis on this. In particular, that's the transportation analysis, given the number of sites and how they're spread out through the city. It's a little bit of a time-consuming process. So right now we're looking at a 9 to 12-month CEQA process. We're thinking we are doing what we can to see how we can adjust the scope of work to try to shrink that process down. So that's something we're looking at right now. We'll see where that goes. What I don't want to do is spend 3 months figuring out how to save 2 months. So we're going to try to be cognizant of that. But that's where we're at with this work. And depending on where that lands, we're thinking late this year or early next year, we would have that ready to council. The final one I'll talk about is yes on school land, a similar policy work where if schools have excess property that they're looking to convert to housing, it would be creating a fast track for them to convert to 100% affordable housing. That work, we did begin outreach last year. It's been on hold due to some staffing challenges. And so we looks like we'll be resuming that next year, so in 2023. And okay, and I'll end with I think my favorite slide, which is our accomplishments in from last year. So we did we have a lot ahead of us, but we did get a lot done last year. Michael touched on some of it. These first two on the list, new citywide design guidelines and standards, as well as the new zoning districts. I can't underscore kind of how major those two documents, those two pieces of work are. We've never really had standards that reflect the levels of density and the type of projects that we've anticipated in our general plan, and we finally do. We have design guidelines that are not based on what development should look like in 1995 finally, so we are very excited with that work, very proud of ourselves for that, and it was adopted by council last year. We've also completed the Berryessa BART Urban Village, a flea market rezoning associated with that. We've completed the 4-year review as well as the annual review of our general plan, mentioned the Sb9 urgency ordinance. And then I'll end with, we have the destination home planner on the citywide team. So it's a planner funded to expedite a review of housing projects that meet certain affordability criteria. That planner in this last year has approved 10 applications totaling 1,300 deed restricted affordable units. And that concludes our presentation.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that presentation. Turning to members of the public, we are talking about the item that was just presented to us, the city roadmap on planning activities. I don't see any hands raised. Okay, I do now. Blair Beekman.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Thank you for noticing my hand. With this report, I guess it was a version of what was spoken at the February 10th Neighborhood Services and Education Committee meeting. They were fairly comprehensive in asking questions about what to expect. There's many variations of this future fair housing policy. There's some awesome ideas.
Blair, this is not the fair housing report. We're talking about the fair housing report later. This is the verbal activities report. Do you have a question or comment about that?
Yeah, I do. I have a comment about the future of the urban village planning issues. Urban village planning is starting to really come around, and it's moving into high gear. But with that said, I don't think what Eric Schoenhauer, the developer, often tries to say at public comment time, it's not a time that we learn to fast track urban village housing. Urban village housing has to go slow. As I keep trying to warn yourselves, with all the important subsidies we're receiving for low-income housing at this time, this very possibly wants to start to be used for high-end developers and their urban village planning. and they're not going to be planning for low and extremely low income. But you're going to say that you are, and it's going to be highway robbery, basically. We're just going to be stuck in another crime-ridden system of big government, dominating and taking over money that's meant for low-income people. So really work on the efforts to make this fair, the future of urban village planning, and open and understandable for.
Next caller is Jill Borders.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to respond to a couple things that were mentioned verbally in this report. As a person who lives in an urban village and is deeply affected by it and some of the zoning changes and the general plan and all of that uproar that happened over mobile homes, we're still stressed about that. We'd like to, I would personally like to know what exactly this SB 940 is. I haven't heard about this. I need to do research. It sounds a little bit confusing with the idea of flexibility where you're down zoning, where you're got the ability now to have some sort of flexibility from doing down zoning and banking it so that you can up zone elsewhere and so forth. And I think all of this talk, this starts with SB 375, and then it went to SB 35. It had to do with the MTC and ABAG, and I did all this research, and I've been ready and willing to be a part of an urban village plan here at Oak Ridge. But things change so often, and it's become so complicated that I'm personally frustrated. I just wanted to say that out loud. I'm guessing that in 40 years, maybe then when the Oak Ridge Village plans start, there'll be 3 more state bills, and I'll be likely equally as confused as well. I'd like to focus 100% at this time in making sure that the conversation around displacement, whether that's going to end up being mobile homes, whether it's going to end up being lower density properties, I want to emphasize that all of this zoning, all of this planning, all the conversation around smart growth needs to focus, in my opinion, on where the funds will be gotten from for displacement, for helping people find a safe place to land. And I've said this before in many documents that I've sent to the city several years back. Because this is something the state wants, because this is something MTC wants, because this is something our region needs, that it should be a multi-pronged system of where those funds come from. The state should be involved, developers, state, city, everybody in paying people to have a safe landing. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Now turning back to the committee, do any of my council colleagues have any questions? Councilmember Mahan.
Thank you, Chair Foley. I guess my first question at least was around SB9 and the reference to expanding into historic neighborhoods. And I'm curious, do we have is that an explicit choice that we're making? Is there maybe a rationale to waiting to see how implementation of SB9 goes elsewhere? What's kind of the rationale behind that being on the roadmap?
Martina, I can say that when we took the emergency ordinance to council, the recommendation that we made to staff was to explore allowing SB9 type housing in R2 zoning districts where the state law does not facilitate it in R2, and also to explore how you could have a win-win by having historic preservation and allow more flexibility for more housing units on historic properties or historic or districts or conservation areas. The council did give us direction to explore that. So decisions have not been made. We would be doing that work, making a recommendation and bringing that back to council for its consideration or further direction.
Got it. Okay, that helps clarify. And then as you explore potential application to historic districts, how are you doing engagement with community to get some initial kind of input and insight from folks who are in historic districts and obviously organized around the preservation of our historic neighborhoods?
Yeah, so we haven't developed an actual outreach strategy yet, but we recognize that, that engaging that community is going to be key. I just want to be clear, what our goal is to create a win-win. I know that's kind of a cliche, but term used, overused, but we really, our goal is to successfully preserve historic resources and see if there's a way to also allow housing, and not creating a situation where more housing destroys the historic assets. So it's going to be critical that we engage the historic community in that to come up with a path forward that can do both of those things. And I think they'll have a lot of insight in how that could work.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I appreciate you saying that. I understand the aspiration. I also know there's just a lot of concern, and I think there's a lot of fear. So I think that upfront community engagement will be important on that one. And then the other question I had was just more broadly, as you were talking through urban village plans, Michael, and outside consultants versus bringing it in, and the timelines for these things. I'm just curious, over the years, what, if anything, have we learned about how to streamline the planning side of this? Are there strategies we can use to make it a little less time consuming to do the planning of these urban villages? Maybe build in more flexibility up front and allow for more definition over time? Or I'm just curious if you've come across any strategies that would allow us to move faster.
Yeah, so a couple of, yes, definitely. So on one front, we've done a lot of the work already, which is good news. So in the past urban village plans, which are pretty thick documents and were very, comprehensive, there's a lot of time spent on urban design guidelines, for example. Some get into sustainability, for example. A lot of those things are better addressed at a citywide level. For example, citywide design guidelines, as Martina mentioned, the council has approved those. So when we do urban village planning now, for the most part, we don't have to get into that level of work. Now, mind you, there may be some communities that have specific design issues or needs that have to be addressed, but that would be more the exception, and we wouldn't have to recreate the wheel every time we do it. So some of that work has been done. The other thing that I think really can be done is just establishing a clear scope of what we're going to accomplish with the urban village plan. And what we feel is the most important part of the plan is the land use policies and the land use plan itself, and how you're going to grow both jobs and housing, and how that's all going to fit together. And so really just being very clear on honing in on the key things that need to be done in that process. And what could be addressed through some other avenue, or does maybe not need to be addressed. And I think that's one of the things. We've had a conversation recently with MTC and ABAG staff related to the Southwest Expressway grant, because when you apply for a grant, often there are a lot of things that you're required to do that you may not otherwise do, but the grant requires that you have to do that. And so one thing we were starting to ask, is it worth us applying for these grants if they require you to do all this other work that you don't think is needed to get the plan done quickly? But in that conversation, I think there was, I think, an acknowledgement from the ABAG MTC staff that were funding us that their intention is not to make these processes laborious. And so we talked about how many of the things that, for example, in a grant that we've done in the past, or they require of us, are being done by other efforts in the city. And they felt that probably they're going to confirm this, is adequate for the purposes of the grant. For example, DOT is doing a lot of transportation work. They're doing these, what are called M-TIPs, around different parts of the city. And those are the processes that can take care of a lot of the work, or much of the work related to transportation. So I think a good model going forward of how we can do these plans quicker, I really think, is going to be the Capital Caltrain station area plan as sort of a model of how we can do these processes quicker.
And what's the timeline difference with that plan based on some of these?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our plans, quite frankly, have taken 2.5, some have taken 3 years for various reasons. The quicker ones easily take 2 years, 2.5 years. So the time frame we're looking at with a stationary plan is 14 months. Now, mind you, that's a much smaller area. But something else to consider is that a lot of the plans that we've done have been larger, more complicated areas, and most of the villages that are larger and complicated those plans have already been done. Most of the ones that are remaining, with a few notable exceptions, most of them are much smaller and could be done much quicker. And in some cases, we think we could consolidate multiple villages into one process, and they could be done a lot quicker. The exceptions are places like Paseo de Saratoga, I think would take a lot more involvement. A village on Deanza Boulevard, I think just from an outreach point of view, which is something it's Cupertino, but it's actually in San Jose. The other one is, we're not planning or proposing to do Oak Ridge Mall anytime soon, but that would be a much larger effort, the villages that are around and include Oak Ridge Mall.
Okay, thanks, Michael. And then final question for you,
Yeah,
just
go ahead.
quickly, was I believe last maybe December when we had a discussion about urban village planning, I think we gave some direction around at least exploring dedicated staffing as part of this budget cycle. I just wanted to check in on that. Is that your understanding? Is that something we'll be talking about in the next couple months here?
Yes, we have put together a budget request. We looked at the villages we thought were the most market ready that actually could result in a significant number of units, both because of being market ready and because of the size of the villages and the opportunities they present.
Yeah.
So we have submitted a budget request for that work.
Great. Awesome. Okay, good.
I just want to add one more thing, is that the staff themselves are really, they want to get these plans done quicker. So it's coming internally. It's not just council direction or feedback from the development community. We internally are frustrated with how long they take. And so it's coming within, and we really are completely holistically on board with trying to figure out a really an effective way to get these plans done in a more streamlined fashion.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I understand the staffing constraints, which is why I had written that memo last November, December, whenever that was. I'm looking forward to seeing that budget request and hope it's something we're able to make happen this year. I think that would be really helpful. Thanks for all the insight, Michael. Appreciate it. That's all I had, Chair.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Perales.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the presentation and the update. To pick up on just the last topic first, and then I'll end with a question. I know from experience on a number of the urban villages that we've had now in District 3, that a lot of that delay, as you will well know, Michael, comes from both our council offices wanting to have robust engagement, right, and some of the back and forth on individual from individual parcels to blocks, and then the community as well. And I would say for the most part, the community feedback and interest is pretty authentic in regards to wanting to participate and have a voice and be able to help shape the area. But every now and then you end up with some inauthentic interest from community members that want to just delay the process because they don't want to see development happening, densification in areas or growth or higher, taller buildings right next to their single family homes or whatnot. And so I think there's just a myriad of challenges that we've experienced, but I do know staff is adapting, especially with the North First Street Urban Village, as you have moved much more quickly than traditional. And it's I think as was described by the mayor and his team, an Urban Village Light sort of process or package coming forward, giving us an opportunity to help move it forward more quickly. I think we'll have to iterate with where there may be a need to do so on some of those plans. But I appreciate, the staff trying to look at how you can actually speed up some of this process, and recognize and appreciate Councilmember Mahan pointing out, what he brought forward last year, which is the dedicated funding, right? If you have more staffing that can be dedicated to really pushing these projects through, we know that that's the case with a lot of the work that we ask staff to do. It's only going to move as quickly as you have the bodies to be able to allow it to move. And so, I'm in support of that as well. The question I had was in regards to, let's see here, going to the slide, aligning our zoning and our general plan. And I'm looking at the timeline there. You've got several hundred properties in chunks coming forward this year. When do we expect, or do we have a timeline for when we will actually complete this bulk of work? I mean, there's a lot of properties that need to be rezoned and you've prioritized it. How long do we think that's going to take?
I think the full body of work, I mean, Martina, you can jump in too, but my sense is it'll probably to fully complete it take probably about 2 more years-ish. Yeah. And we're really focused right now more on the areas where it's critical that it needs to be done. But there are a lot of other areas in the city where it's the right thing to do and we're required to do by state law just to alleviate confusion. But it's not a growth area necessarily, or, but yeah, I'd say 2.5 years to fully wrap it up. We do have we have 2 dedicated staff person. One is a peak staff or consultant, and another is a city staff person. They're fully just plowing forward on this. And so you're going to see more and more of these coming forward. And it's great that we have those resources. They're being funded by a grant, I should mention, SB2. So it's outside funding that's funding this work. We do have city funding too. I'm not saying the city isn't doing it as well, but having this grant funding has been very helpful as well.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. And thank you for your work on that. I know that was also something that's popped up over the years where we don't see that alignment. And a lot of times it's, one parcel here and there, but it can really cause quite a delay. And so I know it's a big body of work though. Appreciate it. That's all I have. I don't know if there was a motion or if we need one to approve the report, but I'll make that motion.
Great, thank you.
I'll second.
Great. I was going to ask you for that, council member. Thank you. I do have a couple of questions. Are you finished? Council member?
So, I'm sorry. Yes. That was
okay. Thank you. I didn't want to cut you off. I do have a couple of questions and some have been asked, so I'll just follow up on them. And one, I'll start with the rezoning. That's a long process, but how are we engaging the property owners that whose property we are rezoning? What's the process that we're working to reach out to them?
So as a matter of course, we notify the property owners as well as people. Martina might know, I think it's 500 feet radius. I'm not sure of the radius, but we do notify people within the radius of the property being rezoned as well as the property owner. And we do have meetings. So far, we don't have a lot of people showing up, both property owners and community members. So there seems to be not a lot of, I guess, concern in the rezonings, but we do notify the property owners.
Yeah, we also notify tenants, I'll add as well. So it's owners, occupants, and then surrounding community.
Okay, so Martina, on the dates, we're coming to council with rezoning on April 12th. Have those property owners been notified and no feedback?
I'll have to double check that, but yeah, they would have been notified at this point. I'm not aware of any feedback, but I'm not aware. So they would have contacted the team directly on it. So I can look into that and get back to you.
I'll just say, just because we haven't heard from them doesn't mean they're not concerned about it. They just may not know it's happening. So we get criticized at the city all the time for not communicating properly. So we need to make sure that we use every tool that we have to reach out to property owners. I'd want to know if my property was being rezoned from single family to industrial. It would be a big deal. But if I'm just getting a postcard with a lot of legal language in the mail, I'm not probably going to pay that close of attention to it. So hopefully we can distribute something or get the word out a little bit in plain language so that they understand what's going to happen, that their property is going to be changed. And maybe they all think this is a great idea, but it's 14,633 parcels and there's going to be one who's not happy with it. At least one. I don't know who, but there will be. So I hope that when we do engage the community, that we don't just rely on one form of reaching out to them. The other questions I had is, and Michael, I'm glad you brought up the displacement of businesses, because as we do these demolition of properties and urban villages are created, there definitely is some displacement of the businesses, even though they may be able to relocate into the commercial space once rebuilt. There's still 2-3 years or whatever, and while they cannot be in that place while the construction is going on. And I'm actually thinking of my project in Cambrian Park Plaza, how that will affect those small business owners. I also wanted to follow up on two things. that one council member Mahan brought up, and that's regarding SB9 and historic properties. It was my understanding that SB9 exempted historic properties, and I'm a little concerned why we would not want to consider or continue that exemption. If SB9 is designed to increase density, then you can't very well preserve a historic property and expand it. The expansion takes away its historic nature. So I'm very concerned that that's even on our work plan. I don't frankly recall the council giving that direction. That doesn't mean we didn't. I just don't recall that we did. And actually I had conversation just yesterday with some residents who live in Eichlers in District 9, which is a designated historic district. And they're actually very happy that SB9 does not apply to them. So I would be very concerned that we are proceeding aggressively on including exempted historic properties when I personally don't believe we should be exempting historic properties. Same thing with gated communities and others. And I also know that there are homeowners associations who are working to figure out how to create CC&Rs that will covenants, conditions, and restrictions that will restrict that development's ability to build to have an SB9 conversion in their development. So I know that's happening all over the city. So I'll just leave it at that, because that's a concern of mine, that we're even talking historic properties when there are other places that we could be addressing SB9. I've got my first SB9 application on a corner parcel in District 9, which makes perfect sense for that particular use of property. It's not historic or anything, and it's a large piece of property on a corner that would make sense. The other thing I wanted to bring up is the yes on school land and the fast tracking of that. I'm all for that. I'm all for the fast tracking, but the question I have, and something I want to throw out there as you're discussing with this with the school districts, is many of them want to use their land to build affordable housing for their teachers and their staffs, which they can do. They can restrict the use of their properties to renting it to their employees. But I want to make sure that we're not making it burdensome for them to do that if they want to build housing and they want to designate their housing for their staff. Because we all know, just as high cost of housing is hitting us, it's hitting educators too, and has for many, many years. So I also want to throw that out there. That's the end of my questions. I think, other than I really appreciate Jill Borders talking about urban villages and the process, and it is complicated and it takes too long. So anything we can do to speed that up is a good idea, and will allow developers to complete the urban village plan that they have their eyes on in our various districts. With that, thank you for the report. I'm going to move on to the next one, which is the Parkland dedication and park impact.
Oh, I think we need to take a vote.
Oh, thank you. You're right. Let's take a vote. Let's vote.
Carrasco,
Got excited.
Aye.
Perales,
Yes.
Mahan,
Aye.
Esparza,
Yes.
Foley.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sometimes I forget my job up here. So the next item is related to our parks and our park impact fee. This is an update. I know I just want to, tomorrow on our city council agenda is a item related to park maintenance report. So we're not going to be discussing the park maintenance report here. This is about the impact fee and the park fees. But tomorrow, if you, and I know many of them, particularly, I'm assuming Councilmember Carrasco, because I read the report. is very concerned about park conditions, and we will be discussing that in great detail tomorrow. So with that, I will turn it over to, I believe, Nicole. Nicole Burnham, are you here?
I am indeed. Thank you, council member.
Thank you.
Sharing screen. I think you should all be able to see my screen. Yes. Okay. Nicole Burnham, Deputy Director, Parks, Recreation, Neighborhood Services. And with me, I have Rebecca Ross, who's supervising planner with us. We're here to just give you an update on our review of our park fee program. It's been quite some time since this program has been evaluated and considered. So it's turned into a big, relatively large body of policy work for us. We're excited about it and happy to be digging in on it. This is just a standard update to let you know where we are. Future updates, you'll see some more details on where the program is heading. Let me see if I can advance a slide here. There we go. Okay, so we're just going to talk to you a little bit about the current program, talk to you about our work plan and decision points, what we're doing for public engagement, and our timeline for doing this work. So first, to talk about the benefits of this program, and to your point, Councilmember Foley, as you made the introduction so eloquently to us, this is our program that drives new park construction in this city. So the graphic you have in front of you is still draft. It's a work in progress, and it's from January. So you can see the council boundaries haven't fully been updated yet either. The team hasn't gotten back to this, but just to give you an idea and give the community an idea of the impact and benefit of this program to the community. This map alone, which we know is still missing a couple of parks, has 28 parks on it that we know were constructed only because we have this park fee program and this impact program. And this is the program, just to give a little bit of context, this is the program wherein PRNS charges residential developers a fee associated with the number of new residents we will have as a result of new residential development. The idea is that everyone needs space, everyone needs open space, everyone in the community needs a park. And so, as we started this body of work, the question that I had with the team is, what have we gained from this program? So the answer is upwards of 30 parks, which I think you can see are really in every council district around the city. And what I love about this is they are parks on the urban floor, right? They're not outlying large parks that are, 5 or 6 acres, which of course we also need, but a lot of these are urban infill parks in neighborhoods where I don't know how else we would have acquired the property. What you see on this screen totals about 104 acres of new parkland that we've secured from this program. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca to talk to you about the policy work that we're currently doing.
Thank you, Nicole. I'm Rebecca Ross, Senior Planner, Parks, Recreation, and Neighborhood Services. And so before you, we have a work plan that we presented to you last year, and our key decision points that we'll be presenting to eventually to the Parks and Rec Commission, as well as to the City Council. So we want to align with larger city efforts like the development fee framework. We want to be able to have fair assessment of land values so that we know we have a fair fee that will enable us to acquire new land if people comply with our ordinances through the payment of fees. We want to comply with new state law that includes, timing of payment and square footage fees. And we are looking at different geographies where we can collect a fee. We want to be able to modernize and simplify the how we give credits towards the parkland ordinances. And of course, we'll demonstrate any legal nexus towards that program. We also, to date, to meet this work plan, we've achieved several milestones, and we have contracted with a consultant, DTA Finance, and they are helping us with the fee study. We're about midpoint in creating the fee study. We formed a 15-member task force, and we've had 5 meetings to date. Next slide, Nicole. One moment. There we go. We've held one virtual community meeting last fall, and we have 3 more coming up We presented an overview of the fee study to Spur. We've also presented an overview of the fee study to the Parks and Rec Commission, to the Developers and Construction Roundtable, the Seniors Commission, the Youth Commission, and the Neighborhoods Commission. We've created a very robust website for the fee study itself, as well as all public outreach efforts, and also being very transparent with our task force meetings, where anybody can go in and watch the meetings, read the minutes, see the presentations. And today we don't have recommendations. We've just been doing a lot of procedural work. Coming up, we want to make sure that we continue to engage the community and inform them where we're at with the fee study. Next slide. Time moves fast in San Jose. So since I've created this timeline for this presentation to be posted here and to be shared with the public, the timeline has changed. So we're going to be posting a new draft timeline on our webpage that is more reflective of where we need to be. So right now we think that we're aiming to have another community meeting in May, as well as in late summer and early fall. We want to return to CED, as well as Parks and Rec Commission and the Youth Commission, the Senior Commission, and the Neighborhood Commissions. Also at the end of the summer community meetings. And then we're hoping to be able to make a presentation and a recommendation to the City Council in December. And with that, I'll turn it back to Nicole. Thank you.
And that's the end of our presentation. We're both here and happy to answer questions that you might have.
Great. Thank you, Nicole, and thank you, Rebecca. Turning to members of the public, we are talking about the fee. We are not talking about the conditions or maintenance of our property. So, Blair.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. I was going to mention my usual about the importance of open accountability with trails. It's possible right now at this time with Chico is doing some good work, or I mean Davis, the city of Davis is doing some good work with that, but that wouldn't be quite appropriate to this item. So thanks for your time.
Thank you. Jill Borders.
Thank you. I thought, first of all, the 104 acres of parkland that is there that otherwise would not have been there, I thought that was a real highlight. Thank you for that. I had a question of that. Our 104 acres of parkland, is that 100%, residential parks owned by the city, purchased outright kind of thing that we're responsible for, or are any of those public-private parks included, like in developments, for example, Santana Row? I know there was kind of a deal worked out there where it's sort of private, but it's, a community benefit. So I'm just wondering if someone at any point, I know you can't respond to my comment, but that's a curiosity that I had. Thank you.
Great. Turning to the panel.
I'm sorry, Chair. I think I accidentally put the hand down of caller user 1. Did you still want to talk?
If he wants to speak on the fee topic.
Okay, he's not.
Otherwise, thank you, Mike.
You're welcome. Okay, we'll continue with the council.
Okay, he's put his hand back up. So caller user 1.
Nice try. Nice try putting my hand down. See what you people do? I can't even call in for something basic and you guys try to keep me down.
May I remind you that we have a code of conduct
Yeah.
that we have implemented this meeting, and we ask you to be respectful. Please continue.
You have to respect me by not putting my hand down. And you know that. And this isn't the first time you guys have done this to me. You know it. So don't try to talk over me. You work for me. I don't work for you. Okay? You represent me. I don't represent you. So here's the thing. Make sure that the fees are going to be fair to these people so we're able to have money for it. Because if you guys start cranking fees like you do fees and fines, you're not going to have any money. You wonder why there's no marijuana money? Because the taxes are too high. But this city, you guys think everybody's dollar bills in their pocket are yours. So you guys better be careful on how you're going to charge people in these upper echelons, because they're not going to be playing. right? They're not going to be playing. And if we want to keep these parks the way we are, you better keep the fees fair or you're not going to get anything. And you know that. And you guys better listen because typically you don't. So don't ever put my hand down again, ever. And don't ever threaten me like that, Pam. You've done it before and you're not going to do it again.
Okay, I'm turning back to the committee, and will I remind everybody that this is our opportunity to address the issue as it relates to impact fees for parks. This is not a use fee, this is an impact fee for development. Could we, anyone have a comment or question? Oh, I will follow up on Jill's question, which was the parks, the 104 acres, are any of those public or privately owned, publicly accessed?
Not that I'm aware of. No, they are all publicly owned.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Carrasco.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, the last caller that called in, I think it's important just for the public to truly understand the difference between the public paying for the usage of the parks and what we're discussing here today. So if staff could be crystal clear so that both the caller that just called in as well as the rest of the public truly understands the difference. We're not talking about charging folks to use the park. We're not talking about an entrance fee. I think you know, if we were discussing that, we would have an entirely different conversation. But I think I think it was Mr. Mancini, caller 1, as he's being referred to today, is a little confused about what we're discussing here today. So staff, could you just please be crystal clear? Let's not use any, you know, industry language, but be very, very clear about this so that we don't have this discussion.
Great point. Thank you.
Sure, I can clarify that, but yeah, thank you, Councilmember Carrasco. To be very clear, yes, we are not talking about charging or implementing any fees on any resident of San Jose. These are fees that are charged to developers when they come in through the development process.
Thank you.
This is much like the affordable housing fee that a developer might make to pay into either they build affordable housing in their project or they pay into a fund. It's very similar to that, but it's not, as Councilmember Carrasco mentioned, and I'm glad you brought the follow-up question, it's not a use fee. It's not a fee to access the park. Councilmember Mahan.
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick informational question as well. Nicole, do we know roughly what this adds to the per unit cost of construction?
We do not yet, so that is the crux of the study, right? So that is the crux of what we're doing. The consultant is evaluating what is our existing, you know, what's the current fee, what's the basis of that fee, what's the future basis of the fee going, and what's the implication. So I think the next update you see with us will be pretty meaty because we're ready to start sharing that data, and you'll really start to see, you know, what the influence is going to be. We are working closely with economic development and with housing, so we can try to get some alignment and understanding of when we push here means pull there, and you know, try to get all these fees aligned and organized more.
I was trying to use that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate that, Nicole.
Okay, great. Councilmember Mahan, would you care to make a motion to accept the report?
Sure, I'll move to accept the report.
Is there a second?
Second.
Great, thank you. Let's vote. Is there someone there who could take the roll and the vote?
Mahan,
Aye.
Foley,
Aye.
Carrasco,
Aye.
Esparza,
Yes.
and Prowse.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next report is the assessment of the Fair Housing Report and Housing Element Strategies Report. I know we have 3 individuals who will be making presentations. Jackie, are you up first?
I am up first. Thank you.
Okay.
Jackie Morales-Friend. I am the Director of Housing, and I'd like to introduce Kristen Clements, who's the Division Manager in the Housing Department overseeing our policy, and Michael, who've already seen earlier today, who's the Deputy Director of the Long Range Planning. And I believe Ruth Cueto is also going to be with us today. So the Housing Department presented to the City Council in mid-2020 on the early results from our assessment of the fair housing work. We returned to NSE earlier this month to give you an update, and we're giving you a similar update in which we just did to them. The housing's affirmatively furthering housing work has now been integrated with the planning's work to create the next cycle of the housing element. So we're very excited to have it included in the housing element because it is a key component of it. The housing element is a large plan to produce, and it requires several staff working closely together across the planning department, housing, and the Office of Economic Development. We have been working very hard for the past several months on moving forward both the AFH and the housing element. Today, we want to give you an update on how these 2 initiatives fit together, our progress, and our early thoughts on strategies that could be integrated into the housing element. At the very end, you'll see our updated timeline and the next steps for this project. And I'm going to turn it over to Kristen to give you the details.
Kristen, you're muted.
Kristen, you there? Oh.
Yeah, she has no audio apparently.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, let me.
Jackie, how about you?
Yes, I'm going to jump in until Kristen can find her voice. So here you can see the different protected classes that fall under our fair housing work. And on the next slide here, now we're just zooming through the presentation. Okay, back to the protected classes. So on the left, you can see all the protected classes that fall under the federal guidelines. And then to the right, you can see California's protected classes. They cover the federal, but they also extend and provide additional rights to protected classes outside of the federal law. And we should note, and I can't help myself, but San Jose is one of the very few large cities that doesn't have our own fair housing law that protects people. We rely on the federal and California law. So the assessment of fair housing and the strategies that overcome barriers are now required to be part of the housing element. And this was a law that was passed in 2018. The AFH evaluates both how we enforce fair housing laws, and how we enforce fair housing laws is very different than how we used to, because now what the law requires is that we assertively and affirmatively look to see how we can create integration. So part of the work is in identifying patterns of integration and segregation at both the neighborhood and regional level. We look for racially or ethnically concentrated areas of poverty. We use the data to do that. And then we look at how does this create disparities in terms of access to opportunities? And then lastly, how it impacts our housing needs and where we see disproportionality in our housing needs. So the housing element has all these other required components.
Jackie, this is my slide. Don't worry, I'll take it over. Actually, you're doing great. I'll just kick back for a minute. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, so Michael Brio here. So just a reminder, so the housing element is one of the 7 required elements of our general plan. It's part of our general plan. In most cities, it's a separate chapter in the general plan. In our city, it's kind of more integrated, but it's one of, I think it's the only one that we're required to update on a periodic basis. So for us, actually all cities now, you have to update your housing element every 8 years. So the last housing element we're currently living under now was called Cycle 5. And we had a RENA number of 30, we had 35,000 housing units that we have to plan for. And the new Cycle 6 housing element, which we are working on right now, requires us to plan for about 62,000 housing units. So it's a little less than double. So it is part of our general plan. It's the policy framework for how we are planning for and are going to facilitate and achieve housing for all income categories. With in particular building 62,000 housing units over the next 8-year period from 2023 to what is that, 2031, I think. Yeah, so as part of that process, we do an assessment of a needs assessment of housing, looking at the demographics, employment, housing trends and conditions that could affect the needs of our population, both the projected new population, but our existing population. We also have to evaluate our past performance under our current existing housing element, how we've done, where we need to improve and where we've been successful, how we might change some courses to actually build. In San Jose's case, as in most cases in the state, cities are having challenges building the affordable housing. The market rate typically is achieved. The goals for market rate are achieved. And then I think one of the more sort of pragmatic or not tangential, but tangible aspects of the housing element is we actually have to identify sites in the city, specific properties where that 62,000 housing units are going to be built. Now, for a number of reasons, we need to have a buffer of roughly probably about 15,000 housing units more than that. So we'll be planning for close to 80,000 housing units or sites that can accommodate up to 80,000 housing units. And so there'll be specific sites which will be public in the summer. People can look at them. We'll be identifying sites for different densities for affordable as well. A key component of this process, which is even more critical, or there's more emphasis on this than past housing elements, is community outreach and engagement. And it's really in part tied to furthering fair housing. And so the state has requirements, and we plan to conduct robust outreach focusing on traditionally underrepresented groups that are typically not part of these planning processes. Another aspect of the housing element is to do a constraint analysis, understanding what governmental constraints and also non-governmental constraints act as barriers to housing development, and recommending remedies that can remove or reduce those barriers to facilitate housing in the next 8 years. And then the housing element develops proposed policies and programs to further facilitate or achieve the housing needs that are identified as part of the work above. And in particular, programs and policies that will affirmatively further fair housing to create more equitable, integrated communities and address past racism and yes, past racism. Next slide. I think this goes to, oh, this is still me. Okay. So there are, I just want to note, there has been a state law that was passed by and signed by the governor from former Assemblyman Chu in San Francisco that took effect January 1st, 2022. In some, the bill effectively reduced the timeline that we have to complete the housing element by 70 days by requiring additional time for review by HCD and the public. And so that's impacting our schedule. So we're anticipating it's going to be difficult to implement and meet the state's deadline to complete the housing element on January 31st of 2023 next year. And so we're evaluating, how can we streamline the process, or move quickly through the process, while also doing the amount of work that needs to be done for outreach, not just because the state is telling us we need to do it, but because it's the right thing to do to outreach to underrepresented communities. And so, I think we need to do that work, and that's something that we really cannot cut out. So we're evaluating the schedule, and we will have more information on what we anticipate the schedule will look like in the future coming months. Next slide. I think this goes to you, Ruth. Yes.
Michael, can you all hear me now? So unfortunately, because I'm showing slides, I can't mess with my Zoom too much. So I'm calling in, and hopefully you can hear. I was just going to say that as we think about the strategies and the policies and programs that we want to create, there's a long list that we started with, and we're going to be getting community feedback, and we're going to be getting your feedback. And but we have to think about how do we focus on those strategies that are going to be the final ones. We know that they have to be both and, which is how the state puts it. You both have to focus on removing barriers to housing for individuals and families that are in protected classes. And you have to think about where you're putting housing and the experience of people who are lower income, people of color, and people in protected classes, to make sure that once they step outside of their doors, their experience of housing in the neighborhood is not limiting their opportunities either, right? We know where people live can really determine a lot of things about their opportunities, and federal law and state law tells us that we can't just stop at thinking about where people, the apartment that they get into or the house that they're able to buy. It's also about neighborhoods. So when we think about what should go into the housing element, we know that they have to be, kind of in all 3 P areas, as we've talked about: production, preservation, and protection. I know the earlier speaker talked about displacement. Displacement was woven throughout the current cycle housing element as an example, and that's one of the things that let staff go ahead and do that work in this current cycle. And then we have to think about what's possible to achieve, within 8+ years, what's possible to achieve, what does the city have control over? And then we're also going to be thinking about what's the impact on equity and the way that the state looks at equity for the ones that we end up selecting. So we're going to go through a refinement period with lots of input, as much as possible, in an abbreviated timeline from stakeholders and residents, and then best practices. Policy organizations have been putting out their thoughts as well. And with that, I'll say that there are 4 categories that seem likely at this point that the strategies could fall into. But again, we're going to be identifying, larger, broad strategies, and then policies and programs that fit under them. But we know from the guidance that these 4 areas do need to be covered. So for now, we're using these as the category buckets, if you will. And then again, we'll be asking for public input to help prioritize and refine, as well as others. So thinking about these 4 areas, it's also a good place to note, fair housing is about access of protected class residents to housing, but the housing elements is about housing for everybody, right? It's about affordability. So there's crossover with a lot of protected classes. They need affordable housing, but we have to think really broadly about serving the whole community, but still focus on making sure folks who are the most vulnerable, or that the law tells us to focus on, are served adequately. So first, we're thinking about access to rental housing. And this means not just can you get into existing housing units, but it's also, are there enough housing units out there, right? What are the places people are renting? And how can we further production, as we talked about in barriers a little bit early? And this is about different products and different price points and different locations as well, if you're really thinking about it comprehensively to meet everyone's needs. The second bucket, I know that council had given us some direction about what they'd like us to explore. So it's kind of stated in that way here. The tricky thing about law, fair housing law, it's both designed to prevent discrimination against certain kinds of folks, but also it prevents us from specifically creating programs for certain kinds of folks. So we couldn't roll out just, a homeownership program for African-American borrowers without a lot of findings and our lawyers being comfortable, and I'm not sure that they would get there. But we can think about what would the programs need to look like to serve everybody? How can we target market? And kind of what are the needs in the homeownership space, both access to homeownership, but also the products. Are we building enough products that can be used for homeownership as well? The third category is about improving access to what the state calls and the feds call racially concentrated areas of affluence. Now, in communities that have higher concentrations of white residents, I shorthand this in my head as saying like it's really those areas that are kind of more well off and more white than the rest of the city. However, we know in diverse communities in lots of places in California, including San Jose, that frame doesn't make as much sense as it does in other places. And so the state is said they're refining what these racially concentrated areas of affluence, what the definition could look like for our state. And they said they're going to be releasing that data layer to us soon. But really this is about how do we get access to areas of higher opportunity in our community. And one of the things that we have been working on as a city together is like a subset of that, right? Which is where should we place affordable housing? So that whole siting policy conversation is an example of access to areas of higher opportunity. This is going to lay on top of the racial frame, and we'll do it in a certain way, analysis for the state's purposes. And then finally, the last category is about neighborhoods. So we have to think again about how do we invest in neighborhoods and how do we identify those that are underinvested and have a high proportion of people of color and a high proportion of very low income, very low income people, extremely low income people. So there's a certain standard that the state and the feds tell you to aim for, has a particular definition linked to federal poverty level.
I found this on the web.
And that is, that's something that we will use here because it's required, but we could also expand it. We should, one of the possible strategies in this is how does the city think about kind of coordinating investments and prioritizing certain areas, both for capital investments, and then also what came up at NSE was programs as well, delivery of programs. So it actually has a overlap with where we can use our federal funds from HUD, but of course this category would take a lot of investment, a lot of dollars of all different sources to make some progress. I think many of you have seen this map from our council update mid last year. This is a dot map that indicates where people of different race and ethnicities live. And again, one dot is 75 people. You can see the orange dots that these residents are white non-Hispanic, largely in the west and southwest area of the city. And the blue dots represent Hispanic residents, and purple, Asian and Pacific Islander who are not Hispanic. So again, this is the data that shows us that San Jose's level of internal segregation is pretty pronounced, because when you squint your eyes, you can see that the color blocks do emanate if you have a harder time seeing it without that. The racially and ethnically concentrated areas of poverty, those neighborhoods that we're told to focus in, the circle highlights the census tracts that fall into that category. And again, we have 75% of the census tracts in the county. There are only 8, and we have 6 of them that count as these recap areas. And this slide does a little blow up of those areas. So we're not limited to thinking about prioritizing these neighborhoods. But, you know, if we get more neighborhoods in areas of priority, then we make more decisions about resources and how to direct them. So these are our recap neighborhoods. We are going to be doing outreach to residents in these areas as we refine our strategies, and with the help of partners are already talking to community-based nonprofits that work with residents in these areas, among others. And with that, I will give it to Ruth to talk about our timeline and our next steps.
Thanks, Kristen. So I just want to note that this timeline is still in flux as we're consulting with the city manager's office and across departments to better understand the ramifications of the timeline. And we're working with the IGR, Intergovernmental Relations team, and consulting other cities as to whether the state can give any flexibility to help minimize the impact of not being certified in the months after the deadline of January 31st, 2023. As Kristen mentioned, in terms of public outreach, there will be some public outreach in March and April, oriented around online surveys, and then a heavy push in May and June, leading up to the public review of the draft, which would also include a round of community meetings. Our plan is to bring it back to the full council in June before the break with key content of the draft plan, and then submit to the state for the very first time for their review. We also expect that the first response letter from the state is going to be rather lengthy. That's been the experiences of other cities, specifically Southern California, that they're most of them are done with the process. But we anticipate that we're going to have lots of points to follow up on after the state reviews our first draft. And as you can see, then, we also anticipate a second submission to the state, and hopefully that will be the last of it in terms of the state's feedback. And we will set it for several commission hearings, including Airport Land Use Commission, Planning Commission, City Council. And with that, we are happy to take your questions and comments.
Great, thank you so much for the presentation. I'll now turn to members of the public. We are talking about the assessment of the Fair Housing Report and Housing Element Strategies Report. First caller is Kalisha Webster. Welcome.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Kalisha Webster, and I'm a housing advocate for people with developmental and other disabilities with housing choices. For over 25 years, Housing Choices has advocated for increased accessibility to affordable housing for people with developmental disabilities living in Santa Clara County, in addition to providing housing navigation and retention services funded by the San Andreas Regional Center to the special needs population. We appreciate the robust community engagement process which went into developing the assessment of fair housing and housing element strategies being presented to you today. This is an extremely important topic for the community we serve, as federal, state, and local data shows that the overwhelming majority of fair housing discrimination cases are based on disability, and newly emerging data has shown that a person of color with a disability faces increased barriers to finding and maintaining safe and stable housing than either a person of color without a disability or a white person with a disability. As you consider this report, we urge you to consider what it truly means to create housing that is accessible to people of all abilities. While universal design and ADA development standards increase access for people with physical disabilities, for a person with a cognitive or behavioral impairment, the key to accessibility are the coordinated supportive services needed to live independently in the community. In addition, the Department of Developmental Services estimates that less than 15% of California residents with developmental disabilities are gainfully employed and so are instead dependent on fixed incomes of around $1,000 per month from disability benefits. Due to the lack of affordable and accessible housing available to people with developmental disabilities in San Jose, less than 10% of the 4,300 adults living within the city have been able to transition into living independently. This is why Housing Choices promotes the inclusion of preferences of a certain number of units in affordable housing projects set at the deepest levels of affordability for people with developmental and other disabilities who will benefit from on-site supportive services in order to maintain.
Thank you so much. Blair Beekman.
Hi, thank you. Blair Beekman here. Thanks a lot for this item. As I tried to say in my first public comment, this was spoken at Neighborhood Services and Education Committee meeting February 10th. It has an incredibly good memo that describes that outlines the future of fair housing practices it wants to work towards. It's an awesome list that I think we should all review and understand. And it's just our decency as how we can work as a community. Thank you. I hope you, like with the previous meeting on February 10th, I hope you can have a robust, constructive conversation today about the fair housing ideas. I'm glad Mike is here from planning. I wanted to kind of reiterate a bit my feelings that, you know, from the previous item as mixed income ideas, along with extremely low and very low income ideas. You know, we're trying to learn to talk more about mixed income ideas. We're learning to. How can that subject be more and more open and clear? Because I think as you're talking about fast tracking the urban village designs, you're going to have to involve mixed income ideas. And you're going to have to involve how extremely low and very low income can work well with more moderate income levels in the future. And we have to learn how to have those conversations openly. We're too afraid to still, and I think in a few years' time we'll be more open to. Why not take the effort now to make that a more open conversation for ourselves? And thanks for your time. I mean, it's really important we work on extremely low and very low income for our future and not sell it short. Thank you.
Next caller is Jill Borders.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to comment. I'm glad that the planning department mentioned that our housing element is sort of embedded into the general plan. I find that to be very interesting, and I have made over time a lot of observations that I just have suggestions and that I'd like to see. So for example, in this particular map where you discuss the racial categories here in San Jose, what might be beneficial to add to our general plan is to converge two maps and have a racially categoried map that is in alignment with the concept that we have of growth around transit areas. Because my experience has been that people of color, low-income people, disadvantaged people, people with disabilities are those that are already living along transit lines and using transit. That's actually certainly my case, where we always chose to live by transit because we didn't either have a car or we were low income and needed to share a car and so forth. I also found that to be the case when I was helping the people that were being displaced in the Winchester urban villages. That entire neighborhood, every house I knocked on, a person of color, a person with a disability, you know, all different sorts of categories where they were already the people struggling according to what we've identified here as people with challenges or additional things they have to deal with. So, and those are the actual neighborhoods that we're seeking to redevelop eventually. And so although we talk about production and preservation and so forth, the reality is that they converge these maps. So if we could have a map, the racially categorized map, overlay the map of where we have our intended targets of redevelopment, I think that will be eye-opening and important to take a stark look at. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Turning to members of the committee, does anyone have, any of the committee members have any questions? Comments? If not, Councilmember Perales?
Yeah, thank you. And apologize, just moving rooms. There's a new baby sleeping.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I know this is a big body of work for housing, and appreciate the update. And it was news to me to hear the briefing a couple weeks back from Jackie in regards to that the state law 2018 that has changed how we're having to report this, and so I recognize the timing on that and the robust community input that is always necessary, but how that's going to move forward. And I had this conversation with you, Jackie, so just wanted to be able to bring it up here on what can we do, if anything, to offer some support for your team to be able to get this work done, right, in a timely fashion, whether it's, speeding up that timeline that you gave. Is it personnel, right, resources that we can be able to provide, or is it taking certain things, off of the table, or is it just not even possible, right? Is this timeline just kind of, it's necessary and kind of stuck in regards to what is needed anyways, based on what you presented?
So actually the housing element is both housing staff and planning staff. So on the housing staff, we have actually made a decision to redirect all of our short-term resources towards this project. So our policy team is working full force in getting the housing piece, our responsibility of the housing element done, but there's also a planning piece that needs to be done. And I don't know if Ruth or Michael want to address on the planning side what you all are doing.
Yeah, I mean, we're essentially readjusting resources just like housing is as well. I mean, we've moved a staff person off the ordinance team that's being reallocated just to work full time on the housing element. Jared Ferguson from the Office of Economic Development is stepping in to do a significant body of work on the housing element. As I think you might be aware, he's in the lead on developing the cost of development study to report to council on what's happening in the housing market in San Jose and what factors are affecting where and when housing can be built. That feeds right into the housing element work that we have to do. So he's joining our team to at least part-time. And we are continuing to look at other shifting of resources and workload to make this happen as fast as we can, while also doing the robust outreach that is really needed and desirable. I would say, I think one of the things that I think we will let council know if there are things that come up as possible work items that could get in the way. I know that there's a lot of work to be done and new things can be added. So, we'll definitely make the council aware if there are things that start to be contemplated to add to our plate that would impact this schedule. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that was the other part of the question, right? Is there anything that we can do? Obviously, we have the upcoming budget process right now, right? And I know there's not one department that I speak to that would deny that they would like additional resources, but I do think that it's important, right, that we hear what it is that you may need, or hurdles that are in the way that we might be able to remove or assist with. So I just appreciate again the update, and I know our community members that spoke highlighted a lot of key points and why it's important that we are robust in this work, because it truly is important, and we do see a lot of disparities amongst different groups of people, where if we're not conscious about how we're building and who we're building for, right, then that impact to them is really felt in their day-to-day lives. And so again, appreciate the work, and I'll make a motion to approve. Thanks.
Second. Great, thank you. Any other questions from the committee? If not, then let's vote.
Carrasco,
Aye.
Perales,
Yes.
Mahan,
Aye.
Esparza, Yes. Foley?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now on to our final report, which is the Development Services Process Improvements and Dashboard Update. Chris Burton, I assume this is you.
I assume so, yes. I'll take it. How about that?
Very good.
Thank you, Chair Foley and committee members. Good afternoon. I'm Chris Burton, Director of Planning, Building Code Enforcement, and I brought some of the key members of our exec team in PPCE with me today to answer all your important questions. So Chu Chang, our Assistant Director, is here, as well as Lisa Joyner, Deputy Director for Building, Robert Manford, our Deputy Director for Planning, and then also Alex Powell, who acts as Chief of Staff in the department and is responsible for collating a lot of the data and stuff that we'll share today. So one moment while I just pull up the right screen. Okay, so hopefully you have the presentation. So as you mentioned, we're here today to provide the first of what will be a regular update on the metrics and dashboard data that we're monitoring and the detailed bottlenecks in the development process for PBCE, as well as sort of highlighting some of our recommendations for improvements. For this first report, we've really started by looking at many of the metrics that we've already been monitoring as a department. But as we return through subsequent reports, we'll continue to refine this, look at our approach, look at how we're sort of presenting this data, and then incorporate feedback from the committee and all of you as we go. While we regularly, sort of good reminder that while we're regularly at council talking about, major policy issues, things like the prior item, as well as specific projects, it's actually been a while since we've been at committee or with council to talk about the kind of business of permitting and everything that really goes into that process. So just to start with a reminder that alongside our development services partners, we issue over 30,000 permits a year. We process approximately 5,000 planning applications, and we conduct over 150,000 inspections each year. So there's a huge body of work. It's being undertaken within PBCE by roughly half of our 300 staff members. So that's sort of, line staff and their supervisors. So I'm going to dive into this slide. This is slightly different from the version that got posted. And the reason, and I know this can be a little overwhelming when you see it at first, and we certainly have all the other slides so we can break down these numbers individually as well. But I wanted to start with this kind of higher level view of our development process and to really highlight how none of the metrics that we're tracking and working to improve exist in isolation within PBCE. The way to really think about all of the different permits and processes that we have moving through at any given time is that, we have planning process and building process, which is our kind of our left-hand axis, and that we're really focused on these kind of three phases through that process. So it's intake, that sort of process of bringing the application or the permit in through the door. The review process, so when we have it, we're managing that process, we're looking through the plans, we're working with the applicant, and then issuance. So how do we get it out on the back end, and then follow up with inspection. So as we're considering the kind of various different customer journey experiences that exist across this and that we steward as a department, we're really looking at those portions of the process that we control and working to provide more predictability and transparency for our customers so they can see sort of how we're working and understand how things are moving through our process. Each of the metrics on the dashboard are representing the actual number that we've seen in January 2022. In the deck, I won't run through each of the individual slides, but in the deck that we provided, it has a list of kind of what each of these metrics are. But it gives you that kind of hard number, and then it's intended to really show you that trend line over the past 12 months or for the period where we have the data available. So as I said, we can sort of come back to the specifics, but for any of the detailed pieces, but I did want to highlight some of the key aspects, again, as we take this higher level view. So if you think about sort of the building permit process, and what I'm really going to focus on is that middle line of metrics. So 7, 8, 11, 12, and then 15, 16. So on the left-hand side in 7, 8, what we're looking at is how many customers are looking to submit plans, come through the process. The total volume in January, we've started to see that spike as we come out the back end of the pandemic. And then as you look at measures 11 and 12, what we're talking about is the total number of plans received and that are being processed. So historically, when we've looked at this, we've talked about number of permits, and the challenge that we know we have when we talk about that is it doesn't really represent the work accurately. So one permit can take one review, one permit can take 3 reviews. So what we're trying to measure and really understand from a sort of productivity and workload standpoint is how many times are plans coming through, and that's what you're seeing there. Is it represented in 1,300 sets of plans being received by the department? We're completing plan check on about 1,400, which means we're actually making ground on our backlog, which is a positive thing. So then in the last 2 metrics, what we're demonstrating is sort of one of our key solutions as we're moving forward and trying to improve productivity. This is where we're looking to move more permits online, where people can pull the permit themselves. As you can see, we're at about sort of a 3/4, 1/4 between permits that are issued online, so kind of in a self-service model. And there are now over 50 permits that individual customers can get issued online. And we're going to continue to look for opportunities to expand this. We're actually presenting at Smart Cities Committee later this week to talk a little bit more about some of the work that's going on behind the scenes with that. Another key measure that I just want to point out before I move on and highlight is really in this first sort of column in the intake side. It's really about how we provide information to the customers, to the general public. And it's really one of those challenges that's arisen directly as a result of the pandemic. So specifically for metric number 2, which is email inquiries in planning. So this is our planning permit center team down on the first floor, typically, sorry. As I said, traditionally, what we've had is when people want to ask a question to the planning department, they want to find out what can I do with my property, what is available, what does the zoning code say? There were 2 ways that you could get those questions answered. You could come in on the first floor and ask that question of a planner live, or also there was a phone line where we have planners that monitor on an ongoing basis. Obviously, through the closure of City Hall, we've not been able to deliver in-person service. We have continued the phone line, and that takes about between 400 and 500 calls a month. But to ensure that we were maintaining that continuity of service through the closure, we opened up an email address so that members of the public could simply just email their questions in. So the challenge here is that rather than having that sort of defined stream of questions between 8 and 5 every day, where you sort of sat at the counter, is that now we have an email inbox that's open 24/7 that people can send their emails into us. And it also is really just representing the start of a conversation. So, you used to come into the counter, you'd ask a question, you get it answered. Maybe you had the follow-up, then you'd go away and think about it, and then you'd have to come back. Now we have folks that are emailing in, they're getting a response, and it's starting that conversation, and we're seeing that sort of as an ongoing basis. And the challenge is that's really not built into our model for service delivery right now. And so we're getting between 1,000 and 1,500 emails a month, which need to be responded to by that team of 10 down on the first floor, amongst all the other work that they're doing as well. So these are some of the impacts that we're really sort of facing and sort of digging into to understand where we're losing productivity and understand kind of what the opportunity is to improve service over time. So just to dig in, on metric number 10, which is the days available until the next appointment. So here we're showing 44 days. I wanted to sort of touch on that a little bit more and go into a little bit more detail. So the average amount of time that it takes to get a building permit can vary significantly. Depends on the type of work, depends on whether it's an alteration, an addition, whether it's new construction, whether it's single family, multifamily, commercial, and then, how long it's with the applicant, how many revisions are required. So that's always a moving target. But one of the things that we hear the frustration from our customers on is how long it takes to actually get in the door to even start that process. They understand that there's a lot of flexibility and complication. And again, this is kind of one of those issues that we've seen as a direct result of the pandemic, has been a slowdown in our ability to intake projects into the building department. So this is just additional time. It's kind of like ghost time where the applicant experiences this challenge and the frustration. And so sort of bringing more focus and more attention to this is really important in understanding where those challenges are occurring. And so we've broken this down by the different types of permit intake that we do within building. It's not just sort of one building permit process. There's a lot of complexity in there. We have over the counter, which is the sort of traditional residential alterations, modifications or additions. There's the simple projects, which tends to be sort of electrical or plumbing projects. This is where we tend to see more of our efficiency gains from online permits issuance. You know, that's where we've seen a lot of those come through, things like solar. ADUs is obviously a point of interest, I know. So we've brought additional focus to that. And then lastly, plan review, which is the bulk, right? Those are the projects that are coming through traditional plan review process. And so, you know, when you look at all of these numbers, what you'll see is the bulk of projects, the bulk of appointments that are coming through are in that over the counter and in plan review. Those are the people that come, that need to either sit online virtually with one of our permit center specialists, or you know, come into the permit center, submit their plans and work through that process. And where we've lost the efficiency through the pandemic is we're booking out appointments for the online services, and it's less efficient than having people sort of wait in the permit center. It's probably more predictable for those customers, but it creates a challenge when you think about the volume of permits that are coming through. What I will say is that we are making improvements in this area. So generally, when you look at this slide, if all those charts are moving down and to the right, that means that the time between when somebody wants to get an appointment and when the appointment is actually held is reducing. One of the strategies to really make improvements in this area is our new rapid online service intake process, or ROSI is the acronym. And this is a process where we have applicants that know the process, that have usually had some experience, understand sort of how San Jose works, can come in and submit their information without having to do the sit down and the appointment. So it certainly speeds that up for the applicant. We know that we're processing and there's less questions around some of those applications. And so what that does is it speeds up that process, not just for the folks that are in the ROSI process, but it also creates capacity, hopefully, in the plan review and the over-the-counter sections, because it's creating more appointments for those people that do need the time to sit down with some of our staff and understand what the process is. The one number I am a little bit focused on, just to kind of give you a heads up, is under plan review on the number of appointments held. So that 433 appointments held in January is higher when you think about the average over the prior year. It's about 290 or somewhere near about 300 that we would do. The fact that we've taken in 433 means that activity is picking up. That also means that that's, you know, potentially more capacity and more delay in the plan review process as we start to work through those projects. So it's more plans in the door. And so we'll be keeping an eye on that. I think certainly as we head into, you know, March, we're experiencing some of the challenges around retirement. It's that time of year when we tend to see a number of retirements. We've already had a couple of folks. And what that does is it impacts our productivity, not just about sort of getting new staff members in, but the loss of institutional knowledge of those experienced staff members means it's harder for us to work through a lot of those projects. And so let me end on that point a little bit, just to kind of give a little bit more detail on where we're at from a staffing perspective, because I think it is a question we get regularly. Across the department, we're sitting somewhere actually closer to 18%. As you can see in some of our service delivery lines, you know, we do have some challenges, and one of those key areas is within building plan review, where we've had a number of vacancies within that team. And so that's something that we're very focused on. We have open recruitments across the board on all of the positions and all the vacancies we have. Our plan, in addition to looking to streamline our hiring process within PBCE and work closely with HR, is to ultimately get that vacancy rate department-wide down closer to sort of 10-12% by March, April. As I said, we have all of these recruitments working through process right now, a number of folks starting to come on board. We just onboarded, I want to say it was 5 new employees in the last couple of weeks. So we are making inroads into this process. I will say it's a challenge right now, just finding the right applicants with the right skill set and the applicable experience. One of the things we continue to look at is how we use peak staffing to offset some of those challenges and balance out the demand. Again, you know, I think we hear a lot at the moment about some of the sort of challenges on hiring. It's certainly not unique to PBCE or to the city. And so when we talk to many of our contractors or to many of the companies that provide peak staffing services for us, they're experiencing similar challenges as well. So their ability to find staff that can backfill those vacancies will help us out when we have increased workload. continues to be a challenge. Within building, we currently have 8 different companies on that master contract to do peak staffing. We're actually looking to do an RFP this year that will expand that number and hopefully get more companies in the mix. So we have more resources to draw in when we have that need. So with that, I'm gonna leave it there and leave it to you for questions. Like I said, we have the team here to answer all the specific details, and happy to do so as you see fit.
Wonderful. I'm really happy to see the level of detail in this report and look forward to having you get that vacancy rate down considerably. I know you do too. I know you have a very hardworking staff that their job is very busy. So first I'm going to members of the public. Caller user number 1, Michael Sonsini. We're talking about the development dashboard.
I had my hand up for the other one. You guys never called on me. You guys, lowered my hand. So, you know what? I'm not going to talk about this one. I just want to say, don't ever lower my hand again, or the calls are going to be flying into your office and on your personal cell phone. Don't lower my hand.
Next caller is Blair Beekman.
Hi, thank you. Blair Beekman here. This item was kind of new to me. I will be hopeful and interested to see how you can better talk about this item and can continue to talk about this item at Smart Cities Committee, I guess, this week. Thanks for your report.
Thank you. Moving to the committee, Councilmember Mahan.
Thanks, Chair. Chris, thank you for the report. Really excited to see the KPIs in your dashboard and how closely you're tracking all of your different performance measures and service delivery measures. As they say, you measure what matters, and I think it's the first step to really optimizing any service. So excited to have that level of visibility at the committee level here. Just a couple of quick questions for you. One is, which of these KPIs right now, which metric represents the greatest opportunity for improvement? If there was one of these that you were really laser focused on, and maybe I'll say other than vacancies. Well, I have a question about vacancies coming up. So just setting staffing aside, when you look at the actual service delivery through kind of the stages of the process, which of those measures are you most interested in investing in to improve?
Yeah, there's a lot of, first, let me start by saying, we have a tremendous staff and they're working incredibly hard on all the work that comes in the door. And I know, I was on a call with some earlier today, and I know they're feeling the pressure, certainly of those vacancies. The key for me is really tracking the volume of work that's coming through the department and understanding that impact, right? And that's why, I know that when you look at that first slide, it can give you a headache because there's so much on there. But the reason it's kind of almost so important to see it all together is to understand that so many of these projects are moving through that process and hit so many parts of that dashboard in different ways. So for me, a big sort of key focus has been how do we reduce that timeline on getting permits in the door, right? Because permits in the door, people pay fees when they submit a permit. That means we can pay staff, right? We're sort of reducing their total time, because when you think of that customer journey experience, it's about, I want to start my project now. I call the city, I have to wait this long to get an appointment, then I have to wait this long to get a permit, and then I have to wait this long to get an inspection. So, we've definitely been doing a lot of work and focus around reducing that time to intake. What I will say is then that just moves all those projects along the line a little bit further, right? Is that once and that's kind of what I was trying to say on that, sort of seeing those numbers come in on the plan review intake, is that when we see more projects coming in the door, that means there's more pressure on the plan review. So it's sort of monitoring as we improve one metric, how does it affect the metric downstream, and how do we continue to improve across the board?
Sure, thanks. And so right now, if I heard you correctly, timed intake is kind of or you're putting some emphasis. One of the things I found really rewarding and kind of awesome about running a very data-driven process at my startups was that to your point about the talent of the team, it really empowered everyone to realize, okay, well, here's what's important, here's what we're measuring, and then we could I found at least that the folks who were closest to the work came up with the best ideas for how to improve processes. And so I'm curious, how do you plan on using the dashboards to kind of empower staff across the entire department to weigh in on what could be improved and to sort of let the best ideas bubble up for how you improve service delivery?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're already starting to see that with processes like the rapid online service intake, right? Which is, very much coming from the building team as they understand those metrics and they see those challenges and see those opportunities. So we're trying to build this into the culture of the department, right? We're trying to make informed decisions as managers throughout the department, giving people visibility and understanding into those metrics and what it means across the process, right? And how it applies and how it has impact. So it's very much kind of the part of the culture and the philosophy that we're trying to build within PBCE. So it's not just kind of one of those reports that we bring on a quarterly basis to committee to say this is where the numbers are at, is that these actually mean stuff to folks. I think ultimately where we'll end up is hopefully that a lot of this, because right now, and some of this is just the challenges around the technology and the sort of intricacies of our process, is putting together reports like this takes a huge amount of time and effort, and certainly appreciation to Alex, who's on the front end of a lot of that work. But, in our sort of preferred end state, what it would be is a lot of this data is coming up from the team, that they're seeing it and that they're using on a regular basis to help inform those decisions, help prioritize, and then help have the conversation about resources in an appropriate way.
Thanks. Yeah, you raised another point that I was going to ask, which is how much of your reporting is automated and what's the potential for automating this so it's not a bunch of manual work every week or month?
So, and we could talk about this for a long time, right? The quality of your data depends largely on your inputs, right? And so ensuring that we're collecting that data in the right way and that our processes are sort of going into our system appropriately. Amanda will throw out the reports. But then it takes some amount of curation and sort of understanding and development to then actually turn it into something, right? So we're working on that. It's definitely sort of intended to be part of the process. It's where we want to be when we think about this in sort of 6 months or 12 months as we continue to evolve this report. But it'll take us some time.
But you think there is, in the long run, opportunity to automate most of this reporting so that you're not manually doing it, or am I mishearing you?
Automate a certain amount of it. I'm going to put Alex on.
So like when an application comes in and then you know how many days it took to close it out, is that something where you can code the system to spit out that number, or are you going to have to continue to manually track this?
All I'll say is that there's never just code the system when it talks about a permitting system. There's a little bit more intricacy around that. Alex, I don't know if you want to add specifics.
No, I totally agree, Chris. There's sorry, Alex Powell, Planning Building Code Enforcement. It's a wonderful question, one that I am particularly interested in, as Chris has already alluded to. There's, of course, everything starts manual with most of our data entry, even with the time to issuance, right? There's a start, there's an end. And I think we identify that, that's manual processes. And that's, again, thinking of the data, that's the genesis of it. Getting it all the way to the point that we have here, there's a few layers of analyses. Could we get it into a more automated state? I think Chris said yes. The automated for the time to issuance, I think that's actually one that is a lot more readily available that staff already do very well. Some of these, and I think Chris was trying to allude to this, that some of these measure activities that, can't be automated, that this is activities that we need staff to really manually put in. And so that's a little bit more manual for just reporting out. So that could be a direction that we go, that we really focus only on the data that is most readily available. But we've tried to take more of an approach of what is the activities that really describe our work the best, whether or not it was manual or automated.
Yeah, and you're going to know that best. I guess I would draw a distinction between staff needing to manually update a system, which is always going to be the case, I would assume, versus triggering automated reporting on the back end, where it's like, okay, it's now advanced to the next stage and not having to actually. So does that distinction make sense? Okay.
Absolutely. The one other item I'd add is it's the same pool of IT resources that do the automation to make the process faster. And so we've had a hard time, particularly with this report, pulling them away from their work to try to speed up this process as opposed to the process of reporting on the process.
Sure. Okay.
And certainly we'll be sort of providing that update. I think it's on Thursday at Smart Cities, right? As we talk about this balance of what ultimately makes a lot of our processes more efficient is looking at those technology solutions that can sort of enhance our ability to deliver service. versus kind of how you balance that with sort of making some of these things easier and more accessible.
Yeah, totally. I'm very familiar. Okay, two quick final questions, and then I'll hand it back to the chair. The question of, so one of the things, at least in consumer internet and B2B, that I know is super important is the notion of drop off, churn. Are you losing people in your funnel? And I'm curious, I did not see a metric specifically capturing that notion. Do we have an ability, or at least an intention, to try to understand how a process that may be slower and more frustrating than we ultimately want it to be is creating some amount of drop off in the pipeline there? Is that something you all are thinking about?
It is, very closely. And actually, when we sort of mapped out what we wanted this report to look like, that was one of the things we identified, that when you, again, take that sort of zoomed out view of it, is how do you line up the resources available with each of those kind of columns or rows that give you that sort of level of productivity, but then specifically, how do you look at time and position? Because there is sort of, an optimization or a productivity related to staff that have institutional knowledge and their ability to kind of process stuff quicker.
But do we have a drop-off rate? I was talking about applications in. I mean, do we think we lose projects? Do we lose investment because the process ends up being slower, more complicated, more expensive than people think? And do we have some notion of a funnel of this many people express interest in doing a project or submitting a permit application, and then this is how many actually get to the other end of the funnel and actually are able to move forward? I mean, that would be a number I think we'd want to understand and try to minimize drop off over time.
Yeah, so I'd love to be able to kick this question to the Office of Economic Development, but I guess I should probably answer it because it used to be part of my portfolio. So I don't think we have a specific number around it, right? I think when we're thinking about the implications of time in as it relates to, opportunity cost or lost investment for development, certainly, spec development or even sort of, large multifamily, is it's really represented as part of their risk portfolio, right? Is that time to delay, and time to market, and sort of how that relates to their funding and the lining up of their investment portfolio, it is often sort of a critical factor. So it's definitely in the mix, but I don't know that you could attribute a certain amount of projects specifically to that as to whether they were a go or no go.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. We may not know all the variables, but I'm just saying, are we planning to track how many initial applications or interest expression comes in at the top of the funnel and how many actually translate into an approved project? Is that,
Yeah.
I mean, you look at it in terms of a funnel or a pipeline like that?
So yeah, okay. So my brain's working a bit slowly today. Took last week off, and that's my fault.
It's Monday.
Yeah, I get your point, right? It's sort of, general plan, zoning, planning, entitlement, building permit, inspection, right? And that's
Right.
your funnel, and there's a drop-off rate associated with that.
Exactly.
And that's a fair question. We have actually talked about that recently. It's not a number we've pulled yet, but I think it's an important one, right? And I think in the context of the general plan amendments that came through the privately initiated recently, we had this conversation, right? How many of these actually turn into real projects? How do we actually sort of see this down the pipeline? So it's something that we want to look at, and we'll continue to analyze. It's, again, just given the sort of layers and the history of entitlement and zoning work and general plan work over the last 2 decades, it's complicated, but
Sure.
it's worth us spending some time on.
Yeah, and sorry to bombard you. I'm just curious about how we sort of operationalize these metrics and to improve the outcomes. And then final question for you, just on vacancies. I promised I'd come back to that one. On at least the more critical vacancies, maybe across the board, to what extent are we doing what I'd call proactive recruitment, where we actually have someone going out and doing proactive direct outreach to people we think might be good candidates at other cities and other states? I mean, are we doing actual manual proactive, hey, check out this job, we'd love to have a conversation with you, or are we mostly passive at this point?
I'd say formally, mostly passive. I think there's some informal work that goes on around that, just through sort of networks and sort of, people reaching out. I mean, I think, we're challenged for those folks in region because, just how we compete with other cities, just as an employer is a challenge at times. And then for those folks that are out of region, just the realities of the cost of living of relocating into this region, certainly for those positions that are at sort of entry level or, you know, even to you know, mid-management level in certain cases, there's barriers to entry for people coming to the area. And what we've seen in some cases, and this is sort of more anecdotal, I don't have data on this, is, you know, folks that have relocated in have a hard time kind of establishing themselves or establishing their life in the area, and sort of we see turnover in those positions. So there's a number of factors. We're doing some amount, you know, certainly through social media, through LinkedIn, through, you know, avenues like that to promote positions. We're starting to now have conversations, you know, informally on a light basis to start to talk about, you know, how we create more pipeline with local universities, with other avenues to sort of look for those opportunities to fill the positions, and be much more sort of formally proactive in our recruitment. But like I said, it's a challenge across the board right now. I think, you know, every department in the city has had challenge hiring. I know that many of the partners that we work with outside of the city, whether it's consultants and contractors or developers, are facing similar challenges right now. And it'll take some time for that to level off post-pandemic. But, you know, we continue to make it one of our top priorities, because the challenge isn't just having enough people in the seats, it's that we're burning out the people that we do have by sort of continuing to load the work on top of it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I empathize with how difficult it is to recruit in this market, and you know, when I was hiring for all different kinds of roles in the private, I mean, it was a war for talent where we found we used to have to get 100 resumes to make one hire. It was incredibly competitive, and we could offer higher salaries than the city. I understand that, at least in some roles, but what I did learn the hard way over many years was it really took a lot of proactive outreach and sourcing of candidates to fill the vacancies we had. And we learned it seemed to be even more important over time. So I would encourage us to really think about to what extent can we deploy proactive recruiting and sourcing techniques, because I think we're going to continue to struggle if we're not investing there. Okay, cool. Thank you, Chair.
Councilmember Mahan, would you care to make a motion to accept?
Sure. Yes, I'll move. We accept the report.
I'll second.
Thank you. Councilmember Perales.
Yeah, thank you very much, and appreciate the presentation and seeing all that data. Thank you very much, Chris. It is really helpful, and thank you to Councilmember Mahan for your questions. And one question that surfaced from what Councilmember Mahan was just talking about, and it's in regards to the number of projects that actually make it to fruition. For instance, my experience over the last 7 years has been there's a lot of projects that will go through, you know, the entire permitting process, application permitting process, and then on their own account, right, for their own reasons, not actually you know, follow through, break ground, build a project, whatever it may be. And there's a myriad of reasons that I've already experienced why. I don't even know if this is possible, but is there a way that we can try and determine, right, a prioritization of projects and where we're putting our time and effort, especially some of the projects that I've lived through in downtown that have taken a significant amount of time because they've been big projects and, you know, potentially controversial, and then they sit there, right? And nothing happens. And so staff has spun their wheels for a year and a half, and, you know, and myself included, my team, and all, you know, community meetings, and then nothing happens. So is there a way that we can, you know, try and determine along the way with projects like that, where then maybe they're not, you know, burning a lot of staff time and so yeah, you get the gist there, but yeah, I'm curious.
Yeah, no, and I think it's a really good question, and you know, one I was not expecting out of this conversation, but still, it's a good opportunity to have it. You know, and I think, you know, as I was saying, it really struck home through our conversation on the privately initiated general plan amendments, right? Because the question came up when you've got a developer who's saying, ultimately, this is the outcome that we're going to deliver on this site. If you just make this change over here, and, you know, we're not doing sort of a great job of keeping track of that and sort of demonstrating what our success rate is on sort of all of these different things. So it's probably worth us spending some time on how we think about it. What I can tell you is, you know, it's not as simple as kind of pulling just a report out of the permitting system to say these are all of the things that have either dropped off. It's going to take some curation and analysis within that, and sort of how we find the space to to have those conversations and make those decisions will be tough. It's probably something that will rope in OED and have that conversation, because I think, you know, what I can tell you is it's important from their perspective in talking to, you know, whether it's business attraction, whether it's sort of housing development, is thinking about kind of what projects are out there that could move, that could be an opportunity. So, you know, having that inventory, and I know we've done it in downtown with the major projects lists and other things, is a useful tool for us to have, both, you know, in our proactive work, but also from an analysis standpoint.
Yeah. Rosalind, I see you threw your hand up.
Thank you, Councilmember Perales. Actually, and Chris just said it. So we do have a major development project list that Emily LaPoma, the city's development facilitation officer, she does manage that list. It has about 25 or so major projects, not just downtown, across the city, and, you know, a range of residential and commercial mixed use as well. And so that's something that we can use as a tool in terms of tracking how the applicants are going through the process, you know, why they aren't submitting their building permit applications after they've gotten entitled. So those are things that we can continue to do.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious again, because I know looking at some of the statistics there, clearly there's things that we can do to, you know, try and improve the process from the last 2 years as we were hindered in the backlog that we have. And I appreciate seeing that the trends are going in the direction that we want to see them. And thank you, Chris, for pointing out that really that initial delay you're working on now, that intake, right, the days between booking and appointment, that thank you for that. It looks like things we can do, but I just, you know, now in my time on the council have recognized where we do put a lot of time and effort and energy in all these projects, but there's some that take significantly more. And I'd be curious on that, you know, that data to see, well, how many of these actually pan out and what are some of those reasons? And then more importantly, is there a way that we can try and figure that out ahead of time? I know over the years, I started to have those conversations with the applicants and developers, you know, wondering, hey, you know, what is your reality on wanting to break ground on these projects, and to give me an idea, you know, should I be allocating my staff time and resources gathering, you know, communities together for community input, and you know, and be doing that, or is it something that is not necessarily a priority because they're just going through the motions? Anyways, I thank you for that, and I think we have the motion already. Yeah, that's right. I seconded. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. I really appreciate your questions, Councilmember Perales, about development projects coming in the door or getting approved and then not going anywhere forward, and the amount of time that we as a council office, but also the staff, are spending getting them further along in a process when they don't actually break ground and nothing comes up out of the ground. I'm wondering if we've ever considered doing a rating, when like the success rating, when an application comes in, do we give it a score of, yes, we think these guys are, we know they're going to come up with the money. We know they've got all their financing in piece. We know there's no environmental issues that's going to kill this deal. Do we have a way of saying, okay, this gets 100% green lighted, not, you know, technically not green lit, of course, but this has a strong likelihood of going forward. Therefore, we should put a lot of resources into it, time and talent. And that includes our council offices, versus someone who comes in and we're listening to their story and we're thinking, I don't know, this is their first development project. It's a weird building that they're tearing down. Do they know the historical, you know, all the things that come up? I'm wondering if we could sort of score it a little bit internally, or what kind of problems that would create for us, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a fair question. I've not met a developer yet that has not convinced that their project is the next best thing. I will just say that as a start point. You know, I think it's definitely a good point, and this is that sort of where we sort of sit on that line between kind of economic development and kind of the core role of PBCE. And it's an important one that we sort of work in partnership on, but ultimately as a service provider, our role is to deliver service to all of our customers, in a timely way, and meet that need and meet that demand on an ongoing basis. There's certainly, projects that we work closely with to ensure that, we're sort of helping them through the process, and through Emily and OED, and then through Jared as the housing catalyst. We definitely have those additional resources. I think that's sort of an ongoing conversation, how we continue to sort of focus on and prioritize those projects that have the potential for a big impact. But ultimately, there are so many factors, and so many factors that make projects that go quickly successful. So many factors. I mean, there's been projects that have sat on the shelf for a long time, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, have just completely reemerged and pivoted. Or there was one I can think of that pretty much got built as entitled a long time ago. So these things happen, but I think from our perspective as PBC, it's really important that we focus on service delivery,
Right.
And meeting the need of those customers.
No, excellent point. Thank you very much. And thank you for your report. So with that, let's vote.
Carrasco,
Aye.
Perales,
Yes.
Mahan,
Aye.
Esparza,
Yes.
Foley.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our reports. Now we move to open forum. Each caller has 2 minutes to address anything they would like to that has not already been addressed on the agenda. Caller user 2.
Hi. Hey there. Yeah, I like the rules. When you have a school board trustee, better believe there's going to be rules that have to be adhered to, and threats, because that's what school board people do. They threaten people, and Pam's perfect for it.
Okay, and we're going to shut you off if you don't continue. If you continue with this tone, please continue with your comments.
Oh, okay. Wait, do you have a tonometer? You have that? How do you know what the tone is? I mean, define it.
A caller has been muted for a code of conduct issue.
Thank you. Moving on to caller to Jill Borders.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to quickly say, I know all of you probably know this already, but I'm very interested in being part of the urban village plan here in Oak Ridge, and there's no way for me to, as a resident, to kind of tap into talking with someone at the city other than sending an email. And you guys are so busy in planning that I wouldn't anticipate we would have a great conversation about something, nor would I expect it, by the way, 4 years in the future. So I'm going to put it out there to anybody in planning listening that I would love to be reached out to and would love to be a part of that. The other reason I bring it up is because after talking with Leslie Guardino, after the new SB 330 law that's going in, I anticipate that there are going to be quite a few affordable housing projects that will go in without any urban village plans at all, and they need to be streamlined, and that's great. I'm glad we'll get the housing. But at the same time, we were sort of told, and I don't want to use the word promised, but there was a really high expectation set that those that were interested in the community would be reached out to, would be a part of that planning. And I kind of feel like now, just so you know, that isn't going to happen. That's going to sort of just be something where there's going to be this task force and this urban planning thing, and it'll be like, Spur and Catalyst SB and all these other people. But I'm here and I'm ready and I'm willing, and I would love very much to be a part of that and reach out to my neighbors and friends and people who live in 95123 and really want to see this place blossom, and not just have groups kind of deciding the fate of this area. So thank you for listening, and I'm here. Love to be reached out to. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jill. Next caller is Blair Beekman.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Thanks a lot for the meeting today. I've been a little bit out of it for a while, and I'm slowly learning to separate from the public comment time a bit and let it breathe. But at the same time, I hope my voice can continue to be respected, and we work towards respect for public comment time overall. And So thanks for your efforts today and what we can work together in the next 6 months. I wanted to quickly comment that, it's my strong belief that mixed income ideas can really be of help to you guys in the next few years. And it offers an incredible flexibility in how to talk about, a variety of different income levels living in the same neighborhood. And so good luck in those efforts, how to better talk about and understand the issue for our future. I think it really is our future. We don't know how to quite yet talk about it openly and publicly. Good luck with that. I wanted to quickly mention, someone mentioned that, someone offered some disingenuous ideas about the future of development in San Jose. And, I don't think it's not quite that possible to be disingenuous about being apprehensive about the future of development. And I really hope that, we really consider fast track housing for the future of, urban village situations and then not be so gung-ho to get into it because you have a certain amount of leeway and privilege at this time. Go cautious, go slow. I think that should be the policy of how we talk about the future of urban village, and it will bring about much better results and we will not feel as greedy. And good luck in the deals with both sides of Ukraine and Russia. They're in a peace negotiation process. They're at the next stages of the peace process. Good luck how they can work their ideas out in Poland.
Thank you. Last caller is the initial M.
Hi, thank you. Just a few comments, mostly on the housing development. I have a question. If anyone can answer the SB 35 mandates and related legislation, I've heard from both the city of San Jose and Saratoga comments about how developers can come in and take, just run free if we don't meet the mandate. And the city of Saratoga was saying, one of the council members said something about including a site where the owner had already written they were opposed to it. It was a country club. And so my question is, will developers be able to just take property as in the case of eminent domain or something similar? In addition, I would like the focus to be for affordable housing to be on building for disabled people, such as units designed for people who are wheelchair bound, blind people, and such. The great thing about those, I worked in affordable housing on a high level as an officer of multi corporations, and they have almost no crime in their units. So it's a really ideal focus. And also well, anyways, I'm running out of time. Mr. Perez, I believe the people who are opposing things such as the height of building are genuine, and they're probably the people who have invested a ton of money in the ownership of local real estate. So I hope you'll respect them going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Emma, I'll just, we don't usually respond to questions at open forum, but I will say that a developer cannot implement eminent domain to acquire real estate. That's only something a government agency could do, and that's a long process. With that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.